Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and a very warm welcome. Thank you very much for joining us for the launch of the Hustler Fund report. We're very happy that you braved the very cold weather to join the Kenya Human Rights Commission and its partners in launching this report. Karibu sana. We are joined by representatives from the Office of the Controller of Budget. We have representation from the Office of the Auditor General. We recognize the presence of Senator Okia Omtata. Karibu sana, Senator. Bwana Raphael Wanjala, MP for Budalangi. We have the committee on, of course, representing the committee on implementation. So we are very happy. And of course, members of the Fourth Estate and everyone, our partner organizations, we have Transparency International. I think we have others that I will make mention of as we go on. So to welcome you very much to this program, we will be launching the Hustler report, the Hustler Fund report. And I think the first thing to note is that it is coming at the right time, at a time when the country has a new program that is called the Empowerment Program, which we all know about. This program has dispensed in excess of 150 million at a time when more than, Sorry for a bit of changes we have to do with the mics. I'm told my face is covered by the mics. I thought I was tall enough. Yeah, but I'm buried in the mics. All right, so this is good. Yeah, so I'm saying that the launch of the Hustler Fund report is coming at the right time, a time when we have seen the countrymen, we have seen what we are calling the president's money men. I think they were called the money men of the president, where in excess of 150 million has been dished out across the country in what is now called the Empowerment Program. And this is happening when out of 50 ministries, departments, and agencies, only 10 have received 50% of their development budget. Only 10 out of 50. And within the just concluded financial year. And when this is happening, 3 supplementary budgets have been developed for the same year. So obviously, there's a problem with the way our financial management is being done in the country, and therefore the report could not have come at a better time. To put these into context, I want to invite the Executive Director of Kenya Human Rights Commission to give us opening remarks, but also to put the entire Hustler Fund in the political context and to shed light in how this whole picture.
Where we are launching a report entitled The Failings, the Hustler Fund as a grand political gimmick disguised as an economic empowerment program. The launch is timely because we are now experiencing a situation whereby a lot of money is being dished out, where sources are being challenged, and we are very sure accountability is going to be a problem. So a bit of context, this study brings together the unique constitutional governance links between the principles in the Constitution on human rights in Article 19, the principles of public finance management in Article 201, and also the notions of financial inclusion and the digital public infrastructure, which has become the norm of provision of services in the country. Why am I raising those constitutional principles and variables? First, if you look at Article 19, sub-Article 2 of the Constitution, it says the reason as to why the application of human rights in the implementation of public policies is to ensure that we preserve the dignity of individuals and communities, social justice for everyone, and also human potential for all. So as we discuss this fund, we need to ask ourselves questions about whether it achieves those human rights expectations. Number two, in terms of Article 201, in terms of principles of public finance management, I just want to revert to two principles, A and D. One of the principles is to ensure that there's openness and accountability, including public participation in financial matters, and also ensuring that there's prudence and also responsibility and probity in the governance of public finance. So as we discuss this initiative around ASLAS, those are some of the constitutional benchmarks we need to apply. The human rights principles when it comes to human dignity and human development, and then the public finance principles, which applies to accountability, responsibility, and the prudence in the management of public affairs. And of course, I've talked about the notions of financial inclusion and also public infrastructure platforms. In terms of financial inclusion, actually, this is the concept which we have applied to think through this study. We have what we are calling a working definition, which refers to the ability of individuals and businesses to access useful and affordable financial products and services that meet their needs, delivered sustainably and responsibly. So that will also ask questions about whether this fund also meets those expectations of a financially inclusive program. So I just want to share just a few findings now based on my presentation in terms of what we have found. And I know my colleagues will present the major details on this. Our study has found that the ASLA fund failed to achieve these expectations based on the following conclusions. First, it is structurally flawed, it is economically unsustainable, politically compromised, it is also run in a way which does not meet the human rights standards I've talked about, because it violates the rights of human dignity, social justice, and the potential for all. It is also run in a way which is extremely unaccountable. And then finally, if you go by the proposal by government spokesman, Mr. Mwaura, where he was proposing that those who are not able to pay their loans should also access the SHA, it also means then people are also going to be exposed to further violations, especially the right to fair administrative action, because that directive by the government spokesman is extremely arbitrary, excessive, and unreasonable, and therefore unnecessary. So this is the summary of our analysis about that. And the details comes because of this finding that by December 2023, over 9.6 billion had been disbursed, yet there was no measurable impact on the enterprise development or job creations. Loan sizes ranging from 500 to 1,000 were too small to start or grow businesses. Repayment terms of 14 days were unrealistic, and the disbursements were poorly matched to actual financial needs. The default rate stood at 68.3%, and there was no regulatory framework for loan recovery, with estimated total cost to taxpayer reaching 71.5%. These statistics point to an economic sinkhole and also a human rights disaster. Further, the study found that the fund governance was extremely opaque. The Office of the Auditor General could not render an audit opinion, citing missing documentation and unsupported transactions. There was no publicly disclosed loan allocation formula, no transparency on repayment trends by region or sector, and no clear criteria for the performance assessment. The centralization of oversight within Nairobi further disconnected the fund from the very communities it's purported to serve across the country. So, based on all this, we conclude that the Hustlers Fund must be scrapped because reforming it is not sufficient based on its foundational, political, and ideological flaws, and of course now the political motivation around it. So with those remarks, I want to welcome you to this conversation, and I hope we'll be able to have a progressive conversation, which then helps us to move this forward. Karibuni sana, asanteni sana.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Davis, for those remarks. Davis concludes by saying the fund should be scrapped. But before it is scrapped, I think we should all get online and get a share of it, because the ones who got between 500 and 1,000, which we have said is too many more to do anything, to start a business or grow it, most of them went off radar. So they will never be found. There's no intention to repay that money. So maybe it's before it is scrapped, we have an opportunity to get a share. I mean, anyway, when I was speaking to a few people off the cuff, a number of them told me why they borrowed and never repaid. It was the single most opportunity to get money from this government for free. So, I mean, it's a flawed system. It's a flawed fund. Reasons have been outlined why it is flawed and why it is therefore unsustainable. And we have seen that by this year, around May of this year, a whopping 6 billion was lost through the Hustler Fund borrowing. And when this happened, I think there was still an appeal to ensure that the fund continues. The PS was obviously appealing to the National Treasury to ensure that this fund is continued. But this, we will be hearing more from my colleague Annette Nerima, who will take us through the findings of the report, some of which have been alluded to by Davis. Karibu, Annette, for the next part of the program. So Annette will be taking us through a presentation of the reports and the findings, obviously, some of which have been mentioned by Davis. We will be projecting. Yeah. Karibu, Annette. 1 minute as we set up the PowerPoint presentation.
Thank you. Good morning. Good morning, everyone. Why aren't we excited to? It's cold. Okay, thanks. Mine is a simple task to share with us the findings of this great research that we undertook or commissioned as the Kenya Human Rights Commission. This study commenced in November of 2023. Thank you. We commissioned this study in November of 2023. So it's taken us close to 2 years. We finalized the same in March of this year. And this took a bit long than other ordinary studies. And the reason it took long will also be shared, why it took us long to be able to just conclude this particular study. But the task here is to share with us the context. And I think as we do this, it's important that we understand this elephant in the room on financial inclusion, because when we talk about the Hustler Fund, it's not in isolation. It exists within the financial inclusion program that the government of Kenya has been investing in for a couple of years. So we may want to understand the history of financial inclusion, the existing financial inclusion funds in the country, but also when we talk about financial inclusion, what exactly do we understand financial inclusion to be? So as a country, we have ratified to very many frameworks. And also, as a country, we are executing the Sustainable Development Goals. And when you look at the Sustainable Development Goals, one of the agendas is also to ensure financial inclusion or inclusive financing as well. So as a country, we have put as well measures to ensure that that happens. And also, as a country, we have what we call the Vision 2030 that was launched in 2008. And basically with the Vision 2030, we have the economic blueprint of our nation, which broadly seeks to see the growth, average growth rate of 10%, but also ensure that there's reduction of poverty and also promotion of food security. So when you do that broadly, you are dealing with financial inclusion matters. When you look at the social aspect of the Vision 2030, that aims to build a just and equitable society and also ensure that there's improved quality of life. That as well seeks to ensure that issues of financial inclusion are factored in. So financial inclusion is not treated in isolation, but it exists or supports the advancement of a blueprint, that's the Vision 2030, and many others, including the Constitution, which is the supreme law of the land. So when you talk about financial inclusion, it broadly facilitates the realization of social services such as health, such as education, because once you increase your income, you're able to ensure that the right to health is realized. When you need health care, that can be taken care of because you have adequate resources to ensure that that is facilitated. So because of that, the government of Kenya for close to 20 years, or rather over 20 years, has been investing in financial inclusion issues. And we have in place a robust framework and also legal notices that have been able to enable some of the funds to be able to exist. For instance, we have the Women Empowerment Fund. We also have the Youth Enterprise Development Fund. We have the Uwezo Fund as well that came into being in 2006, 2007, and also 2014. And finally, in 2022, we saw the establishment of the now Hustler Fund, which is the case in point that we are looking at, or we have been looking at through this particular study. And when you talk about financial inclusion in this country, there are gaps that exist, and it's the reason as to why some have continued to come up to be able to ensure that those gaps that exist are also sealed. For instance, broadly, the financial inclusion funds that have existed have served the political interest. Most of them have existed or came into being for political reasons. A good example is the Hustler Fund, for instance. We saw that that was a campaign promise. And immediately the Kenya Kwanza administration came into being in 2022. One of the first agendas was also to ensure that they established the Hustler Fund. And so on 30th of November, the year 2022, we saw the launch of that fund. The other concern with regards to these funds as well has also been the short-term visibility of them. So again, in the long run, the sustainability of these funds has always remained something that is questionable. The architecture as well, and when you talk about the architecture, that's the legal frameworks that underpin financial inclusion, is also something that a gap exists. So those are some of the challenges. And so when we were doing this particular study, we ensured that all those factors are put into consideration to just ensure that our recommendations as per the objectives that I'll be sharing are as comprehensive as possible. So in terms of this particular study, we had a broad objective, and the objective here was to assess the state of financial inclusion funds in the country with a specific focus on the Hustler Fund, as I've alluded. We had specific objectives that are 3 in number. The first one is to assess whether the Hustler Fund fulfills its stated purpose and also the impact. Yeah, so why did it come into being? And we will be able to delve deeper into that, just basically ensuring that empowerment and also access to credit from a holistic point of view, because that's how it was sold to many, that it will broadly look at the holistic aspects of empowerment and just ensuring that people, especially in the low-income cadres, are able to access credit, are able to grow their businesses and also perform optimally like the rest of Kenyans, which is broadly a great idea. The other objective or specific objective was to assess the architecture and the framework. So there are legal frameworks and there are also regulations that exist to be able to support the existence of financial inclusion funds in the country. So we wanted to review those legal frameworks to just ascertain, are they adequate? Are they supporting effectively the financial inclusion funds that we have in the country or not? And if at all that's not the case, we then providing recommendations for the same, because at the end of the day, the financial inclusion funds should be able to meet the broader objective to which they were generated or developed. The other objective is to provide or develop parameters that are suitable for addressing needs and needs of the poor and low-income groups and also households. So those are broadly the 3 objectives as for the commissioning or undertaking of this particular study. So with respect to the scope, so it's the Hustler Fund in Kenya, and also the individuals and micro, small, medium enterprise beneficiaries. So broadly just looking at all that. We came up with a methodology to be able to support us in undertaking this particular study. And so with respect to the methodology that we employed in undertaking this particular study, we came up with what we are calling financial inclusion framework for analysis. So how do we analyze the existence, the performance of the financial inclusion funds? And so when we talk about the financial inclusion framework for analysis, we are coming from a point where we are saying that we have consumers, we have individuals, we have people that are in need of financial inclusion services and products in the country. But at the same time, we also have people we are calling service providers who are able to scan the environment to understand their clients and be able to provide products and services that meet the needs of their clients. So all this brought together, or that's the demand side and supply side, we are saying that there is an environment that exists in between there to ensure that at the end of the day, both the supplier and also the demand side or the consumer are able to, their needs are able to be met. And within the enabling framework between the supply side and the demand side are the existing legal framework, the political economy, as part of the environment that again determines the outcome of this relationship between the demand side and the supply side. So broadly, within this relationship between the supply side and the demand side, we have an outcome. The outcome would be whether or not there'll be access, there'll be usage, but also quality of the finances, of this, rather the services or the products that are being demanded and are also being supplied by these two groups. And as we assess this environment, we want to understand, once all these outcomes, that's the access, the usage, and the quality are brought together or are realized, are they able to ensure that at the end of the day, they meet the broader objective as to why financial inclusion funds exist, which is poverty reduction, which is increased incomes of the target groups that they are looking at, economic growth of the country, among others. So that's the financial inclusion framework for analysis that we particularly used in terms of our methodology as we assessed how the Hustler Fund particularly performed. Is it able to allow for the beneficiaries to ensure that there's access, to ensure that there's usage, and also quality products and services that are being generated? We can move to the next slide. So to allow us get there, we used a mixed method. So basically just looking at qualitative data. And in terms of qualitative data, there's a secondary data that we were able to look at. And that's provided there. And as I mentioned earlier, we had 3 specific objectives of these particular study. So with the data, the secondary data that we were looking at, you realize that when you talk about resources, for instance, those are the legal frameworks up there that underpin the existence or the performance and functionality of the Hustler Fund particularly, but also broadly the financial inclusion funds. So in terms of allowing us to realize the objectives, the legal frameworks allowed us to understand the architecture and also the framework. Thanks. Allowed us to understand the architecture and frameworks for the existing financial inclusion funds. When you look at the second row, we are looking at other surveys, other literature that have been generated to allow for the country to understand whether the financial inclusion funds that exist are also serving purpose or not. So we looked at existing literature, some of the surveys that have been done to allow us understand the suitability and also the status in terms of access to finance by the low-income groups. We also then looked at other jurisdictions in terms of allowing us to come up with parameters that are suitable for the existence of the financial inclusion funds, among them the Hustler Fund. So we looked at other literature and information and also reports from different sources to allow us come up with suitable parameters that we can then recommend for adoption and also implementation by critical stakeholders to ensure that the existing financial inclusion funds meet the purpose to which they were intended. So we then proceeded to do primary data collection. And when you talk about primary data collection, this was basically supported by purposive sampling approach. So because when you talk about financial inclusion funds, I mean, this is not a cup of tea for everybody, but again, it's important that you look at individuals and also offices that are critical in terms of supporting the existence and performance of these funds. So we ensured that we did what we call the key informant interviews and also in-depth interviews with critical stakeholders that we had identified to be critical in terms of enriching the research study. We also looked at the beneficiaries as well, and with the beneficiaries, we have we talked to the boda operators, we talked to the mamambogas, informal business, people in the informal, with informal undertaking informal businesses, for instance, the grocery ladies, the people in the salons, among others, including the students as well, because from the findings you realize there were also are part of the beneficiaries. So we did that, but with the Hustler Fund, for instance, there are 3 categories of products and services that are being offered. So there is the personal loan product, there is the group micro-enterprise loan product, and there is also individual micro-enterprise loan products. So we talked to beneficiaries of these 3 products to understand whether they were satisfied, whether they were comfortable with how the fund was being administered, the amounts of money that were being provided as loans through these categories that are provided. What exactly is what exactly are their thoughts? What do they think in terms of these services? So that's it with regards to primary data collection. In terms of the data collection instrument, we developed a questionnaire that was reviewed by critical stakeholders, led by our consultant. She's in the room. I know she'll get an opportunity to speak to us as well. So this questionnaire was reviewed, and we made sure that it aligned to the objectives of the research, and then the same was then administered to the key informant, to the key informants to be able to get their views and their perspectives on different questions within the parameters that we have generated. Analysis of the same was then undertaken. When it came to report writing, this was a continuous process. As I started, I indicated, this research has taken long, close to 2 years. So this whole process continued, and we kept on updating information as it came. It's important that we share that there were limitations when it came to broadly undertaking this research study. And one of the challenges that we faced was the paucity of data. So again, we all know that the Hustler Fund was launched on 30th of November, 2022. And the research was then launched close to a month later. And when we did this, about 9 billion had already been disbursed. So, I mean, there was so much happening at that particular time. So it took long because the information that has always been shared out has been shallow. There has been a lot of opacity when it comes to data around this particular fund. So again, also in terms of there was non-responsiveness by especially the duty bearers to be able to just even conduct the interviews and also share critical data that we so much required to enrich this particular study. So that again posed a huge challenge in terms of allowing us to just work within the timelines that we had initially put out. Even within this period that the research was undertaken, one of the other things that we noted is that there has not been detailed reports around this particular fund. So again, that then posed a huge challenge to the research itself. We can move to the next slide. So to just start us off, I know I had broadly or quickly just touched on the legal background underpinning financial inclusion funds in the country. So 3 main acts support financial inclusion fund existence, and one of them is the Public Finance Management Act. Section 24(4) provides that a fund, national government and national government funds can be established, and also special funds. And the Hustler Fund then falls within the category of special funds. And because of this, that particular section was invoked or has been invoked to be able to allow for the development of legal notices, like the legal notice of 167 of 2006. We also have legal notice of 2021 of 2014 that allowed for the establishment of Uwezo Fund, the legal notice of 213 of 2022 that then allowed for the establishment of the Hustler Fund. So there are also other acts. We have like the Microfinance Act of 2006 and also the Sacco Societies Act of 2008 that then facilitate the development of the operationalization of SACCOs in the country and also the microfinance institution. Okay, so broadly and in the interest of time, I'll not delve deeper into the legal framework, but then I can quickly move to the findings because I understand the media is here and they are running out of time because we began a bit late. But it's important that we clarify this because this allows us to understand better the Hustler Fund. So in terms of demystifying the Hustler Fund, this is a fund that exists. It provides innovative and affordable accessible financial product. It exists to, broadly, it was launched in November of 2022, and the startup capital was 50 billion. Credit facility aimed at increasing financial inclusion. It was established under the 2022 Financial Inclusion Fund regulations, and you'll note that the regulations came way later after the launch of the Hustler Fund, and this happened because there are people that went to court because, again, this fund was existing it was existing in a vacuum. I would call basically just a political kind of project at that particular time until when a group of people went to court, and thereafter we had the development of these regulations. Also, we have telecommunications that have then partnered with the fund to be able to just provide the lending services. That's Safaricom. We have the Airtel and Telcom as well. So we want to look at broadly the findings. We can move to the next slide. And this is with regards to the disbursement of and repayment of these funds. So as of September 2024, and this is based on the Auditor General reports. As I've said again, not much information is out there. The information that we have out there are those ones that have been through statements by these ministries. And so basically very, very shallow. But it's important that we note that this is information from the Office of the Auditor General. So 53 billion had been disbursed. That is through the personal loans, people that basically accessed loans to support their services. Then we have the group micro enterprise loans. As of September again, 179.3 billion had been disbursed. One other important thing to note is with regards to the repayment of these loans. So when you talk, you can move to the next slide. Yes. So when you talk about the repayment of these loans, we see that about 10.9 billion has not been repaid. So that's really a lot of money. A whopping 10.9 billion has not been repaid. That's according to the 2022-2023 Auditor General reports. And according to the 2023-2024, about 8.7 billion again has not been repaid. And this is not likely to happen because we are talking about more than 90 days, close to a year. If people have not paid this money, this is money that we can say is lost confidently. So when you compare these amounts of money and with the other existing funds, I talked about the Women Enterprise Development Fund, we talked about the Youth Enterprise Development Fund, and also the Uwezo Fund. So with regards to Women Enterprise Fund, averagely, the repayment is usually at 92%. The UNDEF, that's about 78%. One that is not performing, that almost looks like that of the Hustler Fund, is the Uwezo Fund that was established in 2014. It fares at 40.6%. So really, also with regards to that fund, a lot has also been lost in terms of taxpayers' money. So we can move to the next slide. There are factors affecting disbursement and repayment of the Hustler Fund that this study established. So for instance, the enabling environment, and when you talk about the enabling environment, we are talking about the legal framework, and we are also talking about the political economy of the fund. So with regards to the enabling environment, that's the laws, we see that we have acts such as the Microfinance Act and also the SACCOS Act, and these ones are broadly supporting the private sector. They are the ones that benefit more. So we see that when you talk about financial inclusion funds, broadly they support the private sector and not the public, not the general public. So there's quite a gap there. And the financial inclusion fund, or rather how the Hustler Fund was coined, was basically to address those gaps that exist. However, there are challenges with this framework or the regulations that have been provided to support the existence of the Hustler Fund, that within this regulation, what is lacking is a clear recovery regulation clause in that particular, in the regulations. So what this means is that you will disburse monies out there, but you have no control. So you are unable to be able to ensure that repayment of these loans or the monies that are being disbursed out happens. Again, when you talk about the Hustler Fund, the other challenge that is there is that it's centralized. Unlike the other funds, the Women Enterprise Fund and also the Youth Enterprise Development Fund, which have been decentralized and allows for people at the local level to access these funds, that's not the case with the Hustler Fund, which is centralized. It's broadly managed from here, Nairobi. So many, especially in the constituency level or down there at the local level, are not able to ensure that they are conversant, but they can also get to understand how the fund is being managed. So there is the political economy. So again, we all know how the Hustler Fund came. During the campaigns campaigns in 2022, this was a political project. There was a promise that Hustler Fund will be established. And during when this promise was made, number one, people were told that they will access loans at no interest rate. But then when it was established, they were told there's no free money. You'll have to pay with an interest. So again, there was really no clarity as to the existence and the purpose of the Hustler Fund. That has gained shape. It's not yet there completely. And so we noted through this research, and also based on the people that we talked to, that their understanding and their perception is that the Hustler Fund is a reward for voting in the Kenya Kwanza administration or government. Hence, repayment of the same is unnecessary. So this is quite a concerning finding, because many look at the Hustler Fund as a giveaway. It's a campaign pledge to them, and so they are being rewarded by the government, and they do not have an obligation to be able to pay these monies. So that's one of the other findings that we got from this study. We then looked at the issue of financial access. And when you talk about financial access, we looked at the access, the usage, and quality and impact, because those are the key dimensions for financial inclusion. And this is not just a definition that we came up with as Kenya Human Rights Commission, but it's an acceptable definition, there are acceptable parameters and dimensions when you talk about issues financial inclusion, and these is acceptable to the Kenya National Bureau of Statistics and also financial sector deepening, the FSD. So broadly, those parameters, as we are looking at the findings, we want to understand access, we want to understand the usage, we want to understand the quality and impact, because that's the only way you are able to know whether the financial inclusion funds are performing optimally or not. So when you look at that graph there, this is a graph where we are looking at information from 2006 to 2021, what has really been happening. So when you look at that graph particularly, you'll see that there's one going up there, and that is the formal. So when it comes to access, many people have gone the formal way in terms of accessing loans or financial products and services. And it grows, and you can see a bit of it go down in the year 2021, and this is because of the COVID shocks. That's why it went down. But then we can see that many Kenyans have gone formal in terms of accessing. We can also see in terms of the informal, the line is really going down. So many people are really getting out of the informal arrangements. And also the number of those that we feel or we saw that have been excluded has also been going down. So that's the performance broadly in terms of access. So we see many Kenyans actually going the formal way in terms of accessing financial products and also also services. We can move. So we look at the usage, and when we look at the usage, we compared existing information again between 2019 and 2021. So when it comes to usage, when people access these financial products, we see that in terms of day-to-day usage in 2021, 62.5% utilized that money for day-to-day usage against 62.1%. And then in terms of utilizing the monies or the products that they access for shocks, we see that that number goes up in 2021. That is at 67.1% and at 36.2% in 2019. Then meeting future goals at 59.9 and 59.2 for 2019 and 2021, respectively. So we looked at the quality, and for the quality of services that are being provided. So this was broadly a bit concerning in terms of the finding, because both the secondary data and also the primary data finding indicated that the amounts are at standard. So people borrow from between 500 Kenya shillings and 50,000 Kenya shillings. So that's standard across all the three products. And you'll notice that if somebody borrows 500, 500 is so meager that it cannot allow for a startup, even sustainability and growth of any business. Broadly, that money goes into personal use. So that's also explained the reason as to why not many are able to repay these monies, because you've gotten 500, you've used it on your daily needs. Where are you going to get this money that is not, you've not invested in a business to be able to repay back? Also for the businesses as well, that range is quite concerning. It was also not clear to the beneficiaries the criteria that is used to gauge how much money that an individual is eligible to. So that was also a finding that we established. Thank you. So that was quite concerning as well, that amongst the three categories, that's the personal product loan, the group micro-enterprise loan products, and also the personal micro-enterprise loan products, all of them were in the range of 500 shillings and 50,000. So that becomes problematic in terms of these loans, in terms of this credit facility, just supporting the purpose or the needs of those the beneficiaries in the three categories. The other challenge was the limited awareness about the Credit Reference Bureau, because again, many have defaulted, but they are less concerned that they will end up in CRB, because to them, this is their money. This is the money that was promised to them by the Kenya Kwanza administration, and so they don't see any need to be able to pay. So they were the ones that were targeted, and so they are happy to have spent this money and not repaid it. So these are just some of the testimonies that we captured from the individuals that we talked to, and I will not really be able to read them. You can see them and read it on the screen. I'll not do that in the interest of time. We can move. So in terms of financial literacy and responsibility, this was also a finding that we came up with, and this we augmented with broadly just the desktop data because again, not much information was out there. But one of the things that this research established is the fact that the existing regulation do not provide a structured financial literacy. So it's quite easy, yes, people can access this money as long as you are a Kenyan, as long as you have an ID, as long as you are over 18 years of age. But again, there is no package within the regulation in terms of just supporting the beneficiaries with financial literacy to allow them make informed choices and decisions when they are coming up with options in terms of access to the Hustler Fund. So that's quite concerning, and it also explains as to why the fund does not perform optimally. So this also we looked at alongside other surveys that was done by FinAccess household survey that also then just explained when it comes to issues of financial literacy, we are seeing that many of the beneficiaries, both genders and largely the women or the females, sorry, they access this information from friends and family. So you speak to a family member, they'll tell you, I think this is the best, go for it. But if there was adequate information or financial literacy package out there that allows for people to gain knowledge, that is something that would have been dealt with. But unfortunately, when you look at the screen, those are the sources of information. That's how many beneficiaries get to the information and also make decision based on those parameters. So we also looked, we can move to the next screen. So we also looked at the innovative channels for financial inclusion and targeting the Hustler Fund. And this is quite positive that when you look at the Hustler Fund, it's considered as innovative. Why? Because it integrates digital technology platforms. And the Hustler Fund has therefore partnered with telecommunication companies like Safaricom, Airtel, and Telcom. And through that, they are able to disburse the funds to the beneficiaries. This is a step in the right direction, and unlike other funds that have existed. So this is really one of the findings that we saw was a plus. And again, to just affirm this, just 3 weeks after the launch of the Hustler Fund, about 9.6 billion was disbursed. This was only made possible because of these digital technology. Otherwise, it would not have been able to realize this. The other finding is that despite the existence or the use of digital technology, the same has not been leveraged to just ensure that they get adequate information through technology and working with these telecommunication companies to get sufficient data, especially on the beneficiaries, so that allows them to be able to come up with a criteria for eligibility of the beneficiaries of the Hustler Fund. So again, there's room for improvement with regards to just supporting categorization and also ensuring that the fund is actually fit for purpose. We can move to the next slide. We can go back. So we looked at the implications of transparency, accountability, accessibility, and sustainability of this fund. And transparency was quite concerning, just gauging from the fact that we were unable to get data that should be out in the public, because again, this is a public fund. This is a fund that is kept afloat by the taxpayers' money. So again, we expected that critical information should really be out there to just allow us, or any Kenyan who is a taxpayer, because you are funding that particular fund, that information should have been out there, but unfortunately that was not. We understand that there are security and data privacy concerns, but we are saying that this should not be used as a smoke screen to conceal critical accountability related information. So transparency is a concern that we raise as a finding from this study. When you move to accountability, again, we relied heavily on the auditor General's reports, the reports of 2022-2023 and 2023-2024. And with the Auditor General reports, very many issues were raised. For instance, there were discrepancies in terms of reporting on interest income. In 2022-2023, about 382 million there were discrepancies in terms of reporting that. This even went higher to about 954 million in the 2023-2024 report. There were also issues of unsupported balances and unexplained changes in the assets. Also in terms of recovery and repayment, unpaid loans. This was quite a concern because about 8.2 billion has not been repaid. And I've also talked about over 10 billion in the financial year 2022-2023. So there are inconsistencies in terms of financial reporting, documents and critical documents that ought to be provided to the Auditor General were not provided. And you see, this is a state institution. We expect that another state institution should be able to provide the information to this particular office because, again, it's obligated to ensure that the oversight of this institution happens. So if they are unable to get this critical information, how about organizations such as Kenya Human Rights Commission? So those were accountability concerns that have been raised. When you look at affordability, at the face value, the Hustler Fund really is a good fund, I must say, because when you look at the interest rates compared to other lending institution out there, the Hustler Fund is quite low at 8%, and in case you are a defaulter, that then would rise to about 9.5%. But this is compromised at the end of the day based on our findings because the affordability again now is compromised. How? We have the telecommunication companies that come in, the Safaricom's, the Airtels. So when one then borrows, you'll see that their cost that would come again, for instance, their charges, their fees that would come, we want to withdraw these amounts of money, their fees. So at the end of the day, it looks at the surface value, it looks affordable, but then coupled with these other lending institution, then that goes up. So it's something that really needs to be looked into, and it's one of those critical findings that we established. We looked at the sustainability of this fund, and in terms of our findings, we are saying that financial intermediation services are lacking. When we talk about this, our findings reveal that 68.3% of this fund, there's a default rate of 68.3%. When it comes to cost of operation of the fund, it's at 3%. When it comes to the government, the cost of government borrowing just to ensure that it invests in this fund, it's about 8.2%. Then there's the interest rate income from the borrowers, which is capped at 8%. When you do this calculation, we see that to the taxpayer, this costs us about 71.5%. This is quite unsustainable. So we are basically finding or observing from this research that this Hustler Fund is bleeding money, is bleeding the taxpayers' money. It's basically running at a loss. It's a sinkhole. So really, sustainability of this fund is questionable. It's wanting, and our research basically reveals that. So again, this is just an illustration. When you look at performance, you will see that there were individuals, those ones that when you look at their IDs, there were people that were underage but were able to access the fund. There were people whose data indicated that they were going to be born even in December of 2073. How did they end up even getting these funds? So basically the performance, the management of the fund is quite concerning. And we can see that a whopping 31 million has been lost just because of this kind of negligence. So I'll move into the actions. Next slide, please. So broadly, in terms of parameters, I'll not delve into these a lot because we'll be sharing with you the reports. You can be able to see that. So when we talk about the PROPUA parameters that are expected, we look at accessibility, affordability, and also responsive to the needs of the underserved. Not much details that can be looked at into the larger report, but then we can move to the next slide in terms of our conclusion. So broadly, when you look at the Hustler Fund, I have mentioned that in terms of the default rate, it's at 68.3%. The net loss is at 71.5%, and all those that I've really shared. And therefore, as we conclude, next slide, as we conclude, we are saying that the Parliament and the executive must decommission the Hustler Fund. Why? Because it's politically compromised, it's economically unsustainable, therefore, it should be discontinued. It's also structurally flawed, as I've mentioned. We are also saying that the other institutions as well, the government broadly, as they look at the other funds, and when we talk about decommissioning, we are saying that there are existing other funds, the Uwezo Fund, the Youth Enterprise Fund, and also the Women Enterprise Fund. Earlier this year, in January, to be precise, there was a recommendation through legal notice again that the same is merged, that the other funds are merged. But when this happened, the Hustler Fund was left. So the question is, why was the Hustler Fund left if at all the funds were to be merged to be able to serve a critical purpose? Because they're all funded by the taxpayers' money. So we are saying, as you decommission, the monies should be then redirected to the other existing funds. And as that is happening, ensure that there's financial literacy, there's training on record keeping, and also just ensuring that access is also enabled. So the issue of transparency should also be held, especially with the existing funds, because we are saying if you are merging, make sure you are merging all the funds. But for the purpose, for the Hustler Fund, we are saying that fund should be discontinued. So I'll stop there. Those are the findings from this study. Thank you so much.
Annette, that's your water. Thank you. Thank you very much, Annette, for that very insightful presentation. It paints a very clear picture on the status of the Hustler Fund. It's very clear to all of us that there are many problems bedeviling this fund, starting, of course, from structural issues, inadequate regulatory frameworks, because even though the law allows for the provision and establishment of this fund, they are silent on recovery mechanisms. And so huge amounts of money are being lost, and therefore the fund is unsustainable. And in a country that is grappling with education and health funding crisis, the funds can be channeled to better use. So that's very clear and very elaborate. We will be having a short Q&A session, but before then, I'd like to invite a few people to make very quick remarks based on the findings of the report. And I will start with our partner organization, Sheila, Transparency International, for very quick remarks. We will be having a few remarks also from the very key offices that are represented. So I know I had not sounded you off, but just be aware that the key offices that are represented will be speaking to us in view of the findings of the report. Karibu, Sheila.
I'm just telling Mary, climbing onto those stairs is an extreme sport. But we have climbed, and congratulations very much, Kenya Human Rights Commission, our partner for this very important study. I think we have been discussing as members of the National Integrity Alliance, where we sit with Kenya Human Rights Commission and two other organizations, on some of the concerns that we have in regard to governance at the moment. I mean, it's very concerning, the statistics that, Annette, you have laid out in terms of the default rate at 68%, net loss of 71.5%, and this fund is still working. We are still giving out money. It's like putting money in a bottomless dark pit. I know many of us were concerned when, was it last month or the month before, when the cooperatives CS said that there were a number of people who are defaulted, they can't be found, but yet they were still requesting for more resources. And the first question that you ask yourself is that the way this fund was set up, many Kenyans believed that it would be a self-sustaining fund. People repay, they're repaying on interest, and so that is how it will be sustained. Although we still had concerns about governance, because if you remember how that fund was started, it did not even have governance mechanisms. There were a lot of questions that were asked about the governance structure of the fund. Who was responsible for it? You know, who was going to collect? And it is no wonder that you're having this kind of concerns 3 years down the line. In my own view, this was a slush fund. Coming soon after the campaigns and getting into office of the new regime and knowing how much was spent in the last elections, if you try to triangulate the context and the needs of the political class then, you will see why this fund was established and why it's just not working. And there's really little impact that can be seen from it. And I echo the recommendations that have been given, that Parliament must decommission this fund at the earliest. I see Senator Okiya Omtata here. I see Honorable Wanjala here as well. We hope that you will do the Lord's work and stop this wastage and fraud of public money. We're in a situation where we cannot afford to waste any more resources, to have any more resources lost. But here are facts, not just from the KHRC reports, but we've also seen the concerns that have been shared by the Office of the Auditor General. Why do we continue to put money in a fund, yet we cannot fund basic needs like education and health? But we want to continue giving out money. We know that, yes, we want to support our young people, we need to support SMEs and others trying to do business, but there are other ways of doing it in a more sustainable way. And that is what we require this government to do. We would also ask that the OAG immediately institutes a special audit. We've seen the annual audits, but now we need so far, 3 years later, a special audit also telling us about value for money, efficiency, effectiveness, relevance, and sustainability. We need an audit touching on those aspects as well. so that the government can make very tough decisions in regard to money. The same way pay slips of Kenyans are being raided and taxes have been increased. I think those are, they say those were very painful decisions. We also need a very painful decision about this Hustler Fund. And based on these lessons that we are learning in regard to financial inclusion funds, what are things that must happen before another fund is set out? Because it might not only just be this government, there could be another one and another one that come after this, which would want to have their own fund. But now we know that these funds are not really about enhancing opportunities for Kenyans, for young people, for vulnerable groups, but really funds which are aimed at enriching the political class. And I think another thing that must be also looked at, even as the Auditor General, and even maybe we invite the EACC as well, to look into the concerns around corruption of this fund. Annette, you have mentioned that you couldn't get much information in terms of the running of this fund. I think another question that Kenyans have had are the service providers, because we've also seen a disturbing trend where initiatives have been established, but they're established really to give people's private companies an opportunity to transact, an opportunity to get deals. Could this be another situation where we needed to have a fund where private companies connected to political elites get business opportunities? Because that's the disturbing trend that we have seen in a lot of the new initiatives that have come up with new governments, particularly this government in the last 3 years. So those questions must be answered and Kenyans must be given the facts. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Sheila. And I like how Sheila concludes it by saying we cannot afford any more loss of resources, public resources. This is not the only report that is confirming there's hemorrhage, deep hemorrhage of public resources. In a country that is struggling with so much, I think we can definitely put resources to better use. I'd like to invite Maxwell to speak very briefly on the findings of the report, or just make remarks on behalf of the students' body. Karibu, Maxwell.
Thank you very much for this opportunity. I want to make it very brief, but as the rituals dictate, comrades power, comrades power, comrades ria, comrades ria. Thank you very much. This report could not be any timelier. The development of this report started before we enjoyed the Gen Z moment and the successes that have come with it. So then this could have been us unconsciously predicting how the next 2 years will have turned out. And it marks an opportunity for us to intensify the right kind of conversations in terms of the governance posture that we want this country to assume going forward. And when you talk about Hustler Fund, the conversation around Hustler Fund, it's not a complete conversation if it does not take the direction of the young Kenyan man and woman. Because the narrative around it was to improve the position of the Kenyan youth, at least on paper. But here we are, 2 years into its inception, and the report tells otherwise. So then how do we move from here? The findings are out, and they could be anything but good. It's a very glaring accountability question that this report has confronted us with. And so, basically, how does this report give us the springboard to even intensify the kind of interrogation that we'll want to visit on the state? Is this going to be one of those many academic documents that we dig out statistics from and then leave them on the shelves to gather dust? Or is it going to be an opportunity for us to continue, forging the kind of alliances amongst both young and old people towards improving the governance prospects of this country? In this never-ending tapestry of nation building, could this be one of those very vital fabrics that we can use to continue knitting together a new democratic reality for this country? I think so. But then how do we do it? Are we going to follow the traditional path of complaining and, pointing fingers? Or are we going to continue the thread of the Gen Z revolution of action, intentional action? And I believe it's an opportunity for us to blend the old and the new. In a world where there are conflicting realities and conflicting views, I think this report presents an opportunity for us to reconcile our worlds and come up with a superior narrative that will birth a superior action plan. That is the opportunity I'm seeing right there. It's an opportunity to blend the magic of the old and the energy of the young, so that we continue putting together an army of people that are able to create a new governance reality for this country. Comrades, this is not my opportunity to speak more than I should, but then I think it's an opportunity for us to continue reflecting deeply on just what path we want to take as a people in this long journey to reinvent our democratic reality. The never-ending assignment of nation building. I think this is one crucial block, an extra brick that we should add in building a better foundation for democratic governance in this country. As I finish, Chinua Achebe says that when kinsmen gather around a homestead to talk and dine under the moonlight, it's not because they cannot see the moon from their respective compounds, but it's because sometimes it's good for kinsmen to just gather and talk. This is one of those moments to gather, talk, and reflect on how we are going to continue moving forward boldly, but also clearly, with a great sense of candor and a logical clarity as a country. Thank you very much, and thank you for the opportunity.
I really want to open the plenary, but not before we hear just a few additional remarks. We have a representative from the Institute for Economic Affairs. And I will invite them to give us remarks for just 1 minute. Jairus? Winnie. For Jairus, okay. Winnie.
Good morning, everyone. I am not Jairus. My name is Winnie Ogejo, and I work at the Institute of Economic Affairs. First and foremost, thank you so much to KHRC for a beautiful report. Well done. The findings clearly point out to what is going on in this country in terms of government waking up and deciding to do projects that are financially heavy, and then we do not see the results for it. For a country whose economy is grappling, where for every 100 shilling collected as revenue, we have 70 shillings going in for debt repayment. We cannot afford to be having 10 billion being unaccounted for. For a country that cannot afford to proceed to have children in school, we cannot afford to have 10 billion being questioned. So we appreciate that this report points out to what's going on with the government. And probably if we read the report, we will come to realize it would be important that moving forward, as you come up with these reports, you sort of give us an opportunity cost. So, so that we are saying we are losing 10 billion shillings and we cannot afford to have children in school. We are losing 10 billion shillings and we cannot afford to have, we cannot afford to pay for our learners for exams. So those are some of the things that we think moving forward, it would be important. And just to ask, you said we are borrowing at 9%. Is it 9%? 8% for a country that is borrowing loans at 15%. So that's something we need to sit back and ask ourselves. We cannot be borrowing ourselves at 15% and we want to use the same amount borrowed at 15% and issuing it at 8%. So those are takeaways that we need to think about. Thank you so much, and KHRC, thank you once again.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Winnie. Ambushed completely. I ambushed you, obviously, but thank you very much for those perspectives. And I think you're inviting us to think of escalating the perspectives, to look at what does it mean or what does it translate to when we talk about economic and social rights, especially in terms of access to these rights. Before I invite our keynote speaker, very quick remarks from, we make recognition of the representatives from the Office of the Controller of Budget. I'd like to give them a minute to react to our report. And then in that order, we'll have a representative from the Office of the Auditor General. I will invite Honorable Raphael Wanjala after that, and then we will have the keynote speaker in that order. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much, KHCR. I feel ambushed, but that said, one thing I must say is this is a very insightful report, a very, very insightful report. Thank you very much for that. It is very clear that there is need for transparency and accountability. As my boss, the Controller of Budget, insists, wasteful use of public funds. So in this Hustler Fund, it is very clear that there is need for transparency and accountability. It is also very clear that from the report that they may have started hurriedly. A default rate of 68% is very high. And we feel that it is important at this stage from Auditor General, it would be necessary to conduct a risk assessment of the Hustler Fund and thereby give recommendations on the various mitigations in order to avoid this kind of default. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Pass our regards to the Controller of Budget. We appreciate the very good work coming from that office. If we could have a representation from the Office of the Auditor General. Karibu sana. Asante.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Abdi. I work with the Office of the Auditor General. I'm a director of audit. And the Hustler Fund is actually under my directorate. We did that audit, and I'm happy you have really borrowed many things from our report. The report has already been presented to the Parliament, and is ready for the interrogation of the Parliament. We are going to do again this second time for this financial year 2024-2025. Most of the issues I have seen there you have reflected are really true. Those are the things which we have found, and it is really good. The organization that is managing those funds need to do a lot of checkups with themselves, because most of the things we have requested were not available, and some of the data you have been shown right now by KHRC is true. You can see somewhere there that there are people who are underage. The data, I think the data was not correct. That's why we have such things. The data they are holding to be audited, we were not given the right data. So because you find the age there is really, you can't imagine somebody at that age being given money. So we don't really understand. Anyway, they are not around to also defend it, but I'm very happy. The work you have done, we will also look into your report and borrow many as we do the audit of this financial year, the last financial year, 2024, 2025. We'll also borrow many of the data you have used. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, and I will not belabor your very good remarks. I want to open the plenary for maybe just three. If we could have just three very burning reactions or questions, we will take those as before we invite the keynote speaker, so that we are not speaking to the converted. So I will invite just three burning questions or reactions. Correct. My apologies. Before that, let's have the chair of the Committee on Implementation, Honorable Rafael Mandala, and then we can take three burning questions. Karibu.
Thank you. Good morning, everybody. It's a bit difficult, but I'll try to comment on this report. It's only difficult because the lady who was presenting here happens to be my constituent. And then people may say, possibly, I'm favoring her. But I think I want to appreciate the report she has given. We even find it very difficult to talk about it, because when we lose 6 billion and our universities are closing, it is very painful. But I want to say that what has happened in Kenya, I don't think it will happen again, because the boys and girls who Kibaki took to school through free education are not going to allow this nonsense to happen again in this country, because many of them are now enlightened, because somebody came in to rule us through confusion. And indeed, he has confused us, and indeed, he continues confusing us, and indeed, we are confused. Therefore, this confusion, you know when and how to end it. Because why did we come up with Hustlers Fund when we had Uwezo Fund, Women Enterprise Fund, Youth Enterprise Fund? Whom did we want to empower? Youth. Why didn't we put this money in Youth Enterprise Fund that we can easily audit? If we wanted to empower women, why then didn't we give it to Women Enterprise Fund so that we are able to audit it, and so on and so on? That's why I'm saying we are being ruled by confusion. You are confused, you have been confused, They are continuing to confuse you, and you are confused. Today, we are talking about empowerment. Youth Enterprise Fund has failed to empower you. Women Enterprise Fund has not been able to empower you. Wezo Fund has not empowered you. Now we are on the streets and in the fields of schools trying to empower you. That's why I'm telling you, we are in a confusion. You don't know now where to get this money and why we are not rich and why we are not empowered because of this kind of confusion. Therefore, even when this issue came in Parliament, it was immediately after general election. And with the excitements that was in the Parliament, how it was passed, it was just through excitements. And indeed, ladies and gentlemen, it is until the members of Parliament will understand their responsibility and delink themselves from executive, there will be no progress. I have been there, and I started in opposition, and it's important for members of Parliament to understand their responsibility. They have only 3 responsibilities, but you will find a member of Parliament standing in a podium and defending the executive. You are defending the executive and you are not part of them. You was to oversight them. Why do you defend them? Therefore, until members of Parliament will delink themselves, will stop being compromised by the executive, this country will still be in problems. And as I have said, as they come in when they are elected and they are told now you are in a ruling party, you are a member of Parliament, you are a member of the ruling party, now you are in government, they get excited. And that's why they allow these kind of things to happen. But I'm happy the Auditor General has said that they have given this to the committee. This report has been given to committee for interrogation. Once it is given to the committee, and I ask them also, as you did, request for them to pass some of the information they have there to your office. Once it is brought to Parliament, interrogated through the right committee, then for me, when it comes, mine is to implement. I will discontinue it the very, very day. I will not allow it to continue anymore. Thank you.
Asante sana, Honorable Wanjala. And I think that it sets the pace for the next session, which I will make very short because I'm mindful. Of course, we started very late, but mindful of time. If I could just take 3 burning questions or remarks. Annette, that presented the findings, has stepped out for a media interview, but we have the consultant in the room. She will help us to respond to questions. So the floor is open. 3 quick ones. No questions means it was very clear and that we all agree with the findings, or it could also mean something else. Thank you. Do we have a mic for him? Yes, we have a mic.
Hi, everyone.
Yeah. Hi.
Should I stand?
Yeah, and begin by telling us your name.
Yeah. I am Saitoti Naikuni from Identity Yetu, and I have a question. Mine will go to the Director of Audit from the Auditor General's office. So he has said that from the data they were given, the ages and the dates of birth were a bit weird, and it alluded to probably being fake data. That's a very serious point to note down, because if it might have alluded to fake data or something, what is the next step after that? Because if we have 0 to 17 days old, year-olds around the borrower's list, it's a very serious systemic failure from our side, from everyone, including the Auditor General's office. So what have they done about that?
Thank you for that question. We'll take the next two, and then we'll have them answered together. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Mary Kathomeriongo. I am working in Okiya Mtata's office. There are a lot of things that have been raised here and a lot of illegalities. Where does the buck stop at the end of the day? Do we make all the noise? Do we do all the reports? And then we just call it a day and, things went bad. But where does the buck stop? Who takes responsibility of these things? Or is it normal just to keep losing money in this country? And we sleep and wake up tomorrow and just go on with life. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. My name is Abao Nyego from Identity Yetu. Mine will be to the Kenya Human Rights Commission. You talked about, in your data collection, you said you use secondary data sources. You obtain data from secondary sources. So my question would be, are these sources available? How can we get them?
I have my 3 questions, and I believe those are representative of what the questions in the room we have. The first question goes to the Director of Audits, so we can pass the mic to him.
Okay, on the data of the one you have already showed there, I don't know whether you can able to present there, but it's already available in the report, and the report you can get it from even the website. It is when we interrogated the data, we were checking the IDs and the date of birth, and that's how we came out with that data. So it is the data they provided that has reflected that when we interrogated or when we used our audit tool to analyze the data they have. So it is up to them to tell us now where is this data exactly coming from. That will go to them. If that question is, they are the ones who are supposed to answer that question. But as we have interrogated that data, and that is how it has come. And that's where KNHCR has already also reflected and said, this is what they have also seen in that report, and they are wondering why we have such people who are to be given loans. I hope I have answered your question. Thank you.
Thank you. And he's basically underscoring the structural flaws that come with this fund. The second question, where does the buck stop? I want to pass this question to Davis Malombe. The question on where does the buck stop? So we will make noise, but where does it end?
Thank you. The buck, of course, begins and ends with the National Executive, the Treasury, and also the Presidency, which have been given constitutional mandate to ensure prudent, responsible, and accountable use of public finance. And in the findings, we have seen there's no accountability, there's no prudence. So I think this is the point where then we take it to Parliament, which is then responsible for ensuring that there is oversight on the side of government when it comes to use of public money. So I think we need to hold the national government accountable, but now that responsibility goes to National Assembly and the Senate, Mheshimiwa Wanjala and Mtata, but also on our side as civil society, we'll also find other ways of also holding government to account through civic mobilization, policy, and also legal action. But we also count on the independent institutions, like the Office of the Auditor General, and also Ethics and Anti-Corruption Commission, because they have also been given mandates as the fourth arm of the government under Chapter 15 to also oversight government on different areas of governance. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Davis, for that elaborate response. I'm sure you've been well answered. And then finally, there's a question on the methodology, especially on the data collection, the employment of secondary data, and whether that is available. So that question obviously goes to our consultant, Dr. Miriam Omolo. Yes.
Good morning. Yes, the data is very much available. Everything is in the public domain. You've already heard from the Office of the Auditor General. All the reports are there. You can scrutinize them. And then secondly, there were also key informant interviews where different stakeholders were interviewed, informal, formal traders, even reports that are available in the public domain. So in terms of methodology, it was very robust. All the information that is put there is in the public domain. The only difference that it's been made in a systematic manner that now allows us to interpret the data in a coherent way and make take some actions. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Dr. Miriam. And that brings us to the very important part of this program, where I will be inviting Honorable Senator Okia Omtata to give us the key remarks, the keynote remarks.
I will hold it. Okay. Hold it. Okay. So, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for the honor of inviting me to stand here before you. And I also want to congratulate Mr. Malombe, my good friend, and his team at Kenya Human Rights Commission for a well-researched report on the Hustler Fund. And we hope that it kickstarts interrogation of the wider question of funds in this country. Because one of the major ways that money has been stolen from the consolidated fund is by the establishment of these funds. And we can see that they are being audited without their constitutionality being questioned. And as you know, under Article 229, Clause 6, 229 Clause 6, the Auditor General is supposed to audit for lawfulness and effectiveness. So already on the side of lawfulness, it did not come out. And I'm going to address that particular limb that the Auditor General did not address. Is the Hustler Fund lawful? Will be the basis of my address today. And to do so, I'll begin by referring to how it was established. If you look at through the law, I've looked for it, the only place it's established in law is in the Public Finance Management, that's brackets, financial institutions, close fund brackets, regulations of 2022. It's in the regulations made by the Cabinet Secretary for Finance. These regulations were approved in November 2022, and as you know that the Hustler Fund was launched on 30th November 2022. Unfortunately, 30th November is my birthday, so the Hustler Fund was launched on my birthday. Maybe it was like a birthday gift. So initially, the draft regulations capped the money that could be given to the Hustler Fund at 50 billion shillings. But the final version removed that cap and left it to the National Assembly to allocate whatever it wants to allocate to the funds. And as we stand today, 60 billion shillings has been allocated. That's already 10 billion above what the experts had recommended in the regulations. Another important thing is that administrative costs are not capped. Although it is channeled through the ministry, the Department of SMSCs, through the Ministry of Cooperatives, the administrative costs are not capped. And so, I want to look at an issue that is trying to be addressed. Basically, giving it credit, I would say that maybe whoever came up with that fund, if their best intentions are there, I would be accepted, was trying to address the credit gap in the private sector. That's why you're saying let's give a facility for loans. But our credit gap, the credit gap for Kenya, the economy as it stands today, is estimated at 8 trillion shillings. So even if it was well intentioned, at the current 60 billion, that will be working to about 0.006% of what is required. And so it becomes dangerous tokenism. You think that something is being done when nothing is being done. So in terms of financial inclusion, given what is required for financial inclusion, it's a diversion. It wants us to look at the wrong way. It's inviting us not to look at the problem by promising that there is some hope that side. Now, I said that this thing was established in the regulations. Now, the Cabinet Secretary simply relied on Section 24, Clause 4 of the Public Finance Management Act, which reads, the Cabinet Secretary may establish a national government public fund with the approval of the National Assembly. That's in the Public Finance Management Act. A very, very sad statement. And this is one example of how Parliament has undermined the Constitution. Because if you read the Constitution well, there's no way this law should be standing today, that Parliament surrenders its power to a Cabinet Secretary. I want us to read Article 206 of the Constitution. Which deals with the establishment of funds. In the Constitution, we have constitutional funds, and we have got other funds. Now, we have got funds like the Judiciary Fund, which Parliament has refused to finance up to today. You have got the Equalization Fund in the Section 204. You have got the Revenue Funds for county governments, which is at 207. You have got the contingencies funds at 208. When there's an emergency, you got the contingencies fund. And today, when I was reading the Business Daily, I realized something again very strange is going to happen. Parliament has agreed that money from the levy, the roads levy fund, should go into electricity, to finance electricity, where basically the president is a heavy investor. So they are looking for money to finance the president's projects in electricity. How do you get money from one fund to do another thing? The roads fund is supposed to be ring-fenced. Now, Parliament has again allowed that thing to happen, but that's not the question today. The issue we have today is I would like to go to look at Part 2 of Chapter 12 of the Constitution on Public Finance, and I'm looking at Article 206, which says the subheading
The part 2, the heading of part 2 is other public funds. Then the first section 206 is headed consolidated fund and other public funds. 201, and I'm going to read it verbatim and be patient with me because we need to get to the root of this problem. The root of this problem is a violation of the Constitution, nothing else. It's not a question of auditing, it's not a question of setting up these structures. A river cannot flow higher than its source. Once the source is poisoned, the whole line will be poisoned. So the cure is not in dealing with symptoms. The cure is dealing with the problem. The cure is not in waiting to kill every snake and mosquito and spider and scorpion that escapes from the swamp. The cure is to drain the swamp. So let us not waste our time thinking about the management of these funds. The funds are unconstitutional. You have got no business managing unconstitutional things. So I want to read out Article 206. It reads 206.1. There is established the consolidated fund into which shall be paid all money raised or received by or on behalf of the national government, except money that, A, is reasonably excluded from the fund by an act of parliament and payable into another public fund established for a specific purpose. Take the case of the sugar levy fund. There's a levy. Funds are supposed to be funded by levies, not by the consolidated fund. Money must be excluded before it gets to the consolidated fund if it has to fund a parliamentary fund. So Parliament can establish that. And in support of that, I want to look at other laws. Other than Article 206, Clause 1, if we look at the Public Finance Management Act regulations, that is Regulation 207, B, C, and E of the Public Finance Management Regulations of 2015, you'll find that it clearly states that there is established, it echoes the words of Article 206 of the Constitution that there's a consolidated fund into which all money raised by Parliament, by government, shall be vested in, except money that is reasonably excluded from the funds to be paid in another fund by Parliament. And now, it is Parliament supposed to be doing this work on every fund, not telling the minister, cabinet secretary, that you have surrendered our power to you, you can set up whatever fund you want. That is irresponsible legislation by Parliament. It's lazy. Parliament is being lazy. It is saying, okay, let us just give you the power to do that. Those of you who are in this country, as long as I have been, we remember the days when we had, around the budget time, you would see goods disappearing from the shelves. And then after the budget is read, the goods would come back, usually with new prices. There used to be a law that allowed the finance bill to become law the day it was read. And so I went to court in 2018. I challenged that law, and the law was declared unconstitutional, and the court ordered that the finance bill must be debated and approved by any other bill. It doesn't become law automatically on the basis of the cabinet secretary reading it. So this is a similar situation we are dealing with, that Parliament has ceded its power of oversight to the executive. Just as my friend, the Honorable Angela, has been saying, you find MPs now defending the executive instead of oversighting it. So when you come to these regulations that I've just mentioned, you will realize that these regulations clearly state how funds have to be made up. They come down, when I want to read number E, it requires that, although it is still faulty that they are sending these things to the cabinet secretary, but they require of the cabinet secretary that the cabinet secretary responsible for the national government entity functions shall confirm in writing that the establishment of the fund and its continued existence is not dependent on annual financing from the national exchequer. The design of the Constitution is such that money that goes to the consolidated fund should fund the budget. You cannot take money from the consolidated fund to fund another fund. If you want to set up a fund, you exclude that money from the consolidated fund, not what we are having here. And I've just said that the Hustler Fund is funded by the Exchequer annually through the budget, through allocations from the Treasury. So, what are we dealing with? We are dealing with the failure to adhere strictly to the edict within the Constitution. We have a whole chapter, chapter 12, on public finance. Public finance is not a constituting issue. It's a technical issue that should not be in a constitution. But because of the mischief and the history of this country, the framers of the Constitution decided to include public finance in the Constitution as a constituting principle to ensure that we don't suffer the mischief. And you know, 201, Article 201 demands, gives us the general principles and demands transparency, accountability, and all those things, proper use of money and stuff, and also looking after the future. So we are dealing with this. And now when we come to money, why is this possible? Because the original sin against this Constitution, again, is in the Public Finance Management Act, Section 11, which says that the National Treasury, because under Article 225, Clause 1, it is a requirement that Parliament will set up, by an act of Parliament, will establish the National Treasury. We don't have an act of Parliament establishing a National Treasury. We have the National Treasury established as part of certain legislation. There's no act of Parliament establishing the National Treasury. And the National Treasury is the power of the purse. And the power of the purse is supposed to reside in Parliament, not in the executive. But what does Parliament do in Section 11 of the Public Finance Management Act? It says the Treasury is composed of A, the Cabinet Secretary, responsible for finance, B, the PS, and C, the department or departments. Now, who appoints the CS? The President. Who appoints the PS? The President. Do they have security of tenure? No. At whose pleasure do they serve? At the President's pleasure. So who is the treasurer? It's the President. And that is what you call the imperial presidency. When you have a man holding the sword and the cake, then you have an imperial president. The design of our Constitution is that Parliament should be holding the cake and the President should be holding the sword. Then they can negotiate. So that if my MP, like Honorable Wanjala, who is my MP from Busia, wants to see the waterways in Bunyala, which are all clogged and messed up and resulting in a lot of flooding, he wants to see those things cleared. And he wants to ensure that there is a dredger doing that work. Honorable Wanjala should not go and bow to the President. He should go to Parliament and lobby his peers and say, in the next budget, I have this problem, can you ensure that we do that? But because you have given the President the knife and the cake, today resources are allocated on the basis of proximity to power. And you heard them the other day, even right now, they are saying that ODM, by virtue of ODM joining the broad-based government, development is going to Nyanza. So you have to go and bow to the President to get anything. Now, people like Omtata with stiff backs. My back is very stiff. It has got an iron rod. I cannot bow. What happens? You can't bow. It means you don't get development. I'm wired not to bow to nonsense. So you find that that's where the problem is. You have a funeral somewhere, the President attends, or a public event. They begin making mini budgets as the President is there. We require this, we require this, we require that. And these are MPs who have made a budget that the President has disregarded because he already has the money. He doesn't need the parliament. So you end up with an imperial presidency with a very, very, what I would call, what's the name? Lapdog parliament. We have a lapdog parliament in Kenya. We don't have a watchdog parliament in Kenya. We have a lapdog parliament in Kenya. So that lapdog parliament has to keep on lapping at the president. And so, if we want to fix this thing, let us go back to the design of the Constitution and begin by setting up an independent treasury. Take the power of the purse away from the president. When you talk of separation of powers, there are three powers that are being separated. There's the power of the sword, there's the power of the purse, and there's the power of adjudication. The power of the sword belongs to the president, the power of the purse belongs to parliament, and the power of adjudication belongs to the judiciary. If we can go back to those basics, this country will stand on all its fours, and I tell you, Kenya will become what we dream of it whenever we sing the national anthem. If not, if we reduce ourselves to trying to manage nonsense, like I've seen people say in this room, that we need to manage the Hustler Fund well. You can't manage nonsense. Get rid of nonsense. Go back to the Constitution. A river does not flow higher than its source. Go back to the Constitution, create the institutions as they are required in the Constitution, and we'll make this country breathe. So let us look at our problems as a violation of the Constitution. If we look at the Hustler Fund as a violation of the Constitution, we shall deal with it effectively. But if we look at it as a poorly designed thing or a poorly managed thing that needs to be managed well, we miss it. And it will continue hurting us. And Article Mr. Malombe, Article 24, in Section 24 of the Public Finance Management Act and Section 11 of the same Act need the urgent action of the Human Rights Commission. If we don't protect the public finances, we are wasting time. We shall not have a country. It's money that makes things move. Let us put our money in a lock and keep the key in the pocket of a professional. Let us have an independent treasury. And all these excesses will be contained. And where there are excesses, we shall go to the national treasurer and say, why is this happening? Why is it not, how come it's not in the budget? How come there's no signature of the control of budget? How did money leave this thing? But the way things are, can you imagine at a funeral, an MP standing up and telling the president we require 200 million to fix that road? However well-intentioned, and the president stands up and said, we shall fix that road, I'll allocate 200 million, and it is not in the budget. What are you doing? Thank you very much, and may God bless us.
Thank you very much, Honorable Senator Okia Omtata, for the fiery and very insightful, illuminating remarks. And that is the best point where we will be launching the report. You brought very powerful perspectives on the doctrine of separation of powers, the need for an independent treasury, but also very importantly, decommission the Hustler Fund, which is what our report is proposing. We are proposing that it is an illegal, unlawful fund, and therefore we are not asking for it to be managed prudently. We are asking for the decommissioning of this fund. So kazi kwa Mheshimiwa Wanjala na wenzako, mko na kibarua, and our eyes will be on you. Yeah, so I want to invite a few people to the front to join me here. We will be moving to launch the report in a bit. If we can have our partners from TI, the Students' Caucus, representatives, IEA, Yeah. If you can join me here, then we get copies of the reports. Colleagues from KHRC, I want to maintain the independence of the offices, and therefore I'm not inviting you for obvious reasons, because I'm respecting the independence. But our partners, please feel free to join us here. And then let's have copies of the reports. Sheila, Winnie, I know your names now, for those I didn't know. Mercy and peers. So we will stand here. We come to the podium. Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's because so it's okay. Yes. Yeah, there's more space to the front, so feel free to join. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, we need to drop this. We need to drop this. Robert. We need to uncover this. Yeah, so thank you very much. We will move to launch, we're launching the Hustler Fund report. And we will lift the report, yeah? Yeah, so the Hustler Fund is officially launched. We're calling for a decommissioning of this fund. We have said the fund is unconstitutional, the fund is unlawful, and the fund needs to be decommissioned. So, yeah. Down, down with Hustler Funds, down. Decommission the Hustler Fund. Decommission the Hustler Fund. Channel the money to education. Channel the money to health. Decommission the Hustler Fund report. Decommission the Hustler Fund. Yeah, so we are calling for a decommissioning of the Hustler Fund. Asanteni sana mabibi na mabwana. Yeah? 3 of you remain on stage, so we can all. Do you want to come to? Do we remove it or we? I think we retain it. Yeah. I almost said we decommission the report. Come right here. So feel free to pick a copy of the report. It's right here. Our media comrades, feel free to pick a copy. Anyone, feel free. And then we're having closing remarks by Cornelius. It's 3 minutes to the hour. So Cornelius, you have under 3 minutes.
3 hours. So I think mine will be very brief, just by way of saying thank you to our guests. But before I say thank you, I think I'll just want to emphasize what has been said by the chief guest and other participants. Honorable Senator, for how long are we going to be splashing public funds for political expediency in the name of youth empowerment and financial inclusion, so to speak? So as you rightly put it, Parliament must come and play its role the way it's supposed to be, so that we deal with the question of imperial presidency. We drain the swamp, so to speak, and as well as see to it that our treasury remains independent. Today, the treasury has become one tool that the executive uses to manage politics in this country. Treasury was supposed to be independent so that it manages resources on behalf of the national government as well as county government. It's very embarrassing to see governors who have been elected and been given a mandate going to kneel down in State House seeking development. So I think the political accountability question that we must seek to address is one that ensures that we have a leadership in place that will adhere to the tenets of the Constitution, starting with the article, you clearly pointed, Article 206, on how to establish public funds. We can't have monies going to the consolidated fund and then being channeled to funds that are created for political expediency. So on behalf of KHRC board, let me take this opportunity to sincerely thank our chief guest, Honorable Kia Mtata, Senator Busia, Honorable Anjala, the chair of the implementation committee, the representation from the office of the director of audit, the Auditor General through the director of audits, the office of the control of budgets, our peer CSOs, Transparency International, IEA, Institute of Economic Affairs, the Student Caucus, and many others that I'll not be able to mention. Special thanks goes to our consultant, Miriam Omolo, for doing a good job and ensure that this report is in the form that we've launched it today. Thanks to the media for being with us all this, and sorry for starting a bit late. You've been with us here all through, and you've been able to cover the most part of the program. Equally important is the KHRC staff for your work, beginning when we started this research up to date when now we are launching it. Quite a number of us were represented here. I know you must have introduced yourself. And lastly but not least is the hotel for the good reception and support during the launch. So with those few remarks, thank you very much and have a good day ahead. Thank you. So ensure that you have a copy of the book, so to speak, of the report, because the discussion has just begun.